Phil, the reforms proposed in the New Politics document are the most radical since the 1930s. Why do you feel that now is the time to make changes?
Well, you can't fix the economic and social ills of the country without acknowledging that political reform is required as well. We've seen over the last number of years in particular that Fine Gael have developed a culture where centralise all of particular decision making, where there's nobody held to account, where quangos are set up at arm's length from ministers, and ministers are not answerable to the Dáil. And we need to reverse all of that trend and ensure that we have at local and national level a better system of government that's closer to the citizen and real accountability for the taxpayers' money.
And how will these reforms make TDs and ministers more accountable?
Well, what we have in mind is that we'd have a leaner, more efficient system where we'd have 146 members of the Dáil and where we have key committees of the Dáil underpinned by the Constitution in a referendum, where committees like financial regulation, public expenditure, European scrutiny, public accounts, that those key committees would be able to go behind the programmes of expenditure that we have in the state, assess whether they're good or bad and whether they need to be continued or not, and to see if there is value for money or better value for money to be got off of a different approach. So TDs would be properly resourced in the floor of Dáil committees and the floor of Dáil Éireann to hold ministers properly to account as well, because the ministers at the moment, once they make a decision, if the government deputies just troop in and agree with it, well, that's the end of the story and nobody else has any input.
The document also recommends an overhaul to the Freedom of Information Act. Why is this important?
Well, there's a lot of secrecy going on in relation to how decisions are arrived at, and Fianna Fáil have emasculated the Freedom of Information Act that was brought in by the Rainbow Coalition in 1996. So we want to get back to the 1997 arrangement, where you have much more open decision making and transparency in decision making, and that the government, at the end of the day, that there will be a higher political price for that government if they actually do something wrong or untoward, and that we will have there are more checks and balances for cabinet ministers in respect of this decision-making process.
Now, finally, the New Politics document refers to a new republic. What will that new republic look like?
Well, the new republic, as far as Fine Gael will be concerned, will mean that we'll have a more streamlined parliament that's more closer to the people at local and national level, and that we'll have taxpayers' money more accountable, because it's hard earned, and we want the people's representative in Parliament to be able to scrutinise that expenditure, to be able to deal with legislation in a much more intensive and detailed way, and have a bigger input into that legislation that affects all of our lives, and that the public sector reform agenda will also mean that the citizen will get a better service, not necessarily with more money, but certainly with a more efficient service and a more accountable system as well for the senior managers of our public service and our civil service.
So effectively the citizen is a much